motion to approve the minutes as listed in our agenda.
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We're gonna go out of order. If there's no objection, we're gonna start with item number 7 on our agenda, which is the salary refresh Q12, and we have a presentation on that. Yes, please, come on
Good
forward.
morning.
Come on down.
Evening.
Did I say good morning?
What's that?
Sorry.
close.
I don't think they caught it on
Good
the mic.
evening.
Mr. Bonsu? I don't know.
Just starting the day. Just start the day. All right, I have copies here available for you of our executive summary. So if you remember, we, Carlson Detman Consulting worked with the city to implement the existing compensation plan back in 2016 to be implemented in 2017. And one of the recommendations that we provide our clients is that in order to maintain a sound compensation structure and philosophy, we recommend going back out and rechecking the markets. And depending on the economy, it's someplace in the 3 to 5 year range. We're in quite a hot economy right now in terms of jobs, and it's moving. So we're definitely on this 3 year cycle right now with our clients. So because of that, what we were doing with this particular project is taking your existing structure and measuring the benchmark jobs again and seeing what the market was doing. And so this executive summary is our findings on that. And so essentially what we have found is that with the appropriate adjustments that you guys have been doing over the last years with your structure, you're maintaining the competitiveness of your existing structure. So as a reminder, your structure is a hybrid structure, so you have steps leading up to the control point, and then from the control point up to the maximum, it's an open range. And so it's that control point or that midpoint of the pay range that we were testing with the market. And so what we found was we had about 43% of the entire jobs that we considered benchmark jobs. So there's about 58 jobs that we measured again. It covers just under 60% of your employees. On page 2 is at the very top is the listing of the sources that were used to measure this. So again, it's taking that existing project and replicating it. And so there were about 30 or so municipalities that were included to pull the public sector data. And then the BLS data, as well as the Towers, Watson, and Comp data are private data sources that we subscribe to. So those are going to be a mix of both public and private data in there. The chart on page 2 is a representation of the findings.
What year is that chart?
Everything is aged. The data itself is all aged to 1/1 of 2020. So that's what we were testing for. You guys are in a little bit of a unique situation in that your structure is implemented in July 1, but we were market testing your current structure against 1/1 2020 data. And so it's right on. The anticipation would be that you would continue to adjust your structure moving forward. And actually at the last page of the document provides some recommendations in terms of where the market is and what we're seeing in terms of projected changes for structures into 2020. The structure again, or the graph, I'm sorry, on page 2, the big bold black line is your current pay structure, and hidden behind that is the light gray line. So you're seeing that it is essentially keeping pace with the existing market or target market. The last page is the listing of all of those benchmark jobs. So it includes the title of the benchmark jobs. Again, there were 58 of them. The number of incumbents that you currently have within each role, your existing midpoint, so the current structure that you have, and what that market estimate is showing. The far right then is a market index, and so that's simply a measurement of your current structure measured against the market estimate. And so you'll see that overall market estimate down at the bottom is, I do. The market estimate is sitting at 100%. So overall, you're right on. Obviously, you can see there's some variance around that as you look through the structure. In reviewing the data with Rebecca, we tend to kind of use the guidelines that anything from 5% below or above is essentially on market and target. If you remember when the plan was initially implemented, there's variance around that line. So the idea is that each pay grade is set up and structured such that it can accommodate those variances. Where you start to see variances greater than 10%, so sitting at 90% or below on that market index, those would be areas that would be ones that you'd want to review. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to take action on them. There's some explanations for some of those variances. I'm going to use the dispatchers just as an example. In going through this particular study initially, the qualifications that the city has in terms of recruiting for dispatchers is lower than the standard in the market. So because of that, we would expect to see that that's a little bit lower. And if you look at that, they're sitting at an 85% market index. So because of the qualifications that the city puts on place, we would suspect that that would be a little bit lower, and that's what we're seeing here. If it were a concern, recruiting, those types of things, you may want to consider making adjustments around some of those positions. But the cautionary tale to any sort of adjustments for those positions that are greater than the 10% is really just making sure that you're maintaining your internal relationships as well. So that's something that is important to be mindful of as you're making any sort of those internal adjustments to the structure.
Dan, I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
introduce you. You're Jenna
That's
Bidwell from Carlson Detman,
That's
correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Yeah, any discussion, concerns?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Alderman May.
I'm just going through and I'm circling those that are 5% or more under, squaring those who are 5% or more above. And I'm also looking at this chart. This is a perfect line. It doesn't show all the data points of where we are or where the market is.
Correct.
So this is really a trend line, and if you look at it, anyone below about 700 to 750 job evaluation points we're underpaying. So according to this anyway. So this would be our truck drivers, it would be our laborers, that sort of position. And on our higher end, our higher job evaluation points, they're getting more. And so when I look through this list, it doesn't surprise me when I see that we have things like electrical mechanic, engineering tech, planner, arborist, dispatcher, truck drivers. Those are the positions we're having a hard time filling. And so I think what this shows me is we probably should be making some adjustments to our salaries for some of these positions to bring them up. My understanding is DPW may be understaffed or have 20 to 25 positions opening, if that's correct.
Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, there have been some recent hires. There is that, I'll be talking about this a little later, but some of the divisions there are staffed for, as if we were having a snowstorm for the full capacity year-round, so that's something we want to look at. But you're correct in saying that a lot of these lower ones we've had challenges hiring. The two that actually did surprise me were the arborist and the planner, because we have not had any challenges with those whatsoever. So, but we've been doing different things especially with electrical, with a signing bonus that the council approved and things like that to work on mitigating our hiring challenges, which has been successful in recent weeks, so.
When I look at this, Mr. Chair, if I understand correctly, at least looking at the data points, or the lines as they're
Sure.
plotted, you took the data and you shot a straight line through it, not you, but
It's a
you as
regression analysis.
representative of the
Yes,
company.
yes.
It's a regression analysis.
It is.
And it's a straight line regression.
It
There's
is.
no,
Correct. It's not a curve linear. Yes. Yes.
is there a reason, is it forced to be a linear one, or is that the best fit?
The original, yes, and the original project also included a linear regression. It lent itself, the structure itself is built on a linear regression. So if you changed the regression analysis of the existing structure, it would be those wouldn't, there would be a separation, a significant separation, because now the analysis is different.
Okay, I'm gonna get really geeky with you. Do you know what the
yeah.
R squared was?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can absolutely provide it. I want to say it was 95, 96%. It was a high R squared. And for any of those who aren't familiar, it's our way of being able to explain that the job evaluation score can explain 95% of the variance in pay from job to job. Okay, I can get that for you.
Okay.
I don't have it on this chart.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All right, do we want to place this on file?
There's another component, the Q12 survey, that's the other.
Oh, okay, yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
Keep going.
All right, we're going to shift gears just slightly. Pass this, please. You're welcome. So,
Thank you.
summer of 2017, yes. Summer of 2017, we administered the Gallup Q12 survey, engagement survey, for the city. And at the time, we were working with the city on the performance management piece. This was right after the compensation, initial compensation study had been implemented, and there were a lot of changes occurring. And best practice is you've had some time to make some changes within your organization, within departments, and we wanted to do a follow-up resurveying. And so that's what you've just received is the 2019 employee engagement survey results. So a quick explanation on a refresh, if you will, for how to read the survey. So in the upper left-hand corner is the engagement index. It breaks the employees into 3 different groups. So we've got the green, which is engaged. Those are those employees with psychological commitment to the organization. Those really exerting the discretionary effort. The gray is the not engaged. Those are kind of the ones sitting on the fence, if you will. And then the black is the actively disengaged. And so, again, those are we're a school of fish swimming in one direction. Those are the fish swimming against us. So they're undermining every effort that you're making to move the organization forward. So you'll see the past was our 2017 results. So we were sitting at 28% engaged and 28% actively disengaged. That has shifted now, and we're currently sitting at 35% engaged and 18% actively disengaged. The current state of the U.S. workforce, average employers are sitting about 33% engaged. So you guys have now moved above that mark. I would say more significantly is that shift from the 28% actively disengaged down to 18% actively disengaged. It's a pretty significant shift. In the middle then are some numbers. So the pass score grand mean was 3.44, and you're comparing that now to a 3.71, bless you. This grand mean is an average of all the averages. So when employees are participating in the survey, there's 12 questions regarding engagement. It's a 5-point scale. The grand mean is an average of all of those responses. So in the past, that overall score of 3.44 puts you in the 5th percentile. So 95% of organizations were scoring higher than you. The shift now to 3.71, has moved you to the 25th percentile. So again, significant change upward. I think it's important to note. The questions then are listed down below. You'll see question 00 is a satisfaction questions, and then 1 through 12 are focused on engagement. In the center, you'll see your pass scores. To the right of that then shows you the current. In parentheses around each one of those is the number of responses. So last time we took this, we had a 60% participation rate. This time we had a 71% participation rate. So again, another significant move forward, I think, in terms of gaining feedback and hearing from your employees. On all of the 12 questions, the measurement went up with the exception of just one. That was question 9 about the commitment to quality. Quite honestly, I'd call it a wash. It was a 3.87 before. It's a 3.86 this time. That external market comparison is the 21st percentile. It was the 21st percentile last time. So I would say for the most part, we're seeing positive movements across the board on these.
Yeah, I'll say this is great. This is much, much improved.
And- And this, just as a reminder too, so this is your overall. There are department-specific breakouts so that they can take their results and tailor it to their specific staff and have additional conversations and continue to move the numbers in a positive manner.
Great. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Root.
every year they always have in the Milwaukee Journal, best companies to work for. What do their charts look like? I know you don't have one with you.
Right.
I would be curious, are they all like hacked off? Are they all happy like they're at Disney World or what?
So what I can't speak to that particular poll because there's a lot of different criteria that go into some of those best places to work. I will tell you, utilizing this tool, the Gallup Q12, the organizations that are the top of the top in terms of their engagement level is about 70%.
And we're at the 40.
And this is for, we're sitting at
Seven.
35%. 35%. I'm sorry. This is around that engagement. So they've got 70% of their staff.
The whole thing.
Nobody is 100. Those are the best of the best. That's a really high number, I would say. And again, kind of keeping that into perspective that the average U.S. organization is sitting at 33%. So, but that's what the best of the best who have committed to this are doing. Yeah, no, I think that's a great question.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman May.
So this is compared to the entire market. How does this compare to governmental agencies?
This particular database does not break down specifically to governmental agencies. They have opportunities for more targeted benchmarking. Obviously, that comes with a cost. But this particular database is a 3-year rolling database. There's just over 12 million responses in it today.
And then can we get the copies for each department? I'm curious to see. That'd be great. And then when I look at this, I mean, it's good. It's movement upward, but I don't know if it's great. Only 11% percentile-wise are satisfied with where they work. Only 9% feel like they're being recognized. Not that percent, but you know what I'm
Sure.
saying?
Yeah,
Or ninth,
yeah.
ninth percentile, people
Yes,
feel like they're
yes.
being recognized. The opinions count one looks low. Yeah, so
Sure.
I think, so tell us, looking at this, what do you think needs improvement?
So a couple reminders. These particular questions 1 through 12, are part of a hierarchy and they build on top of one another. So questions 1 and 2 are foundational questions that need to be in place for everybody. So although we've seen a significant move on those, I would say we want to continue to focus to ensure that people are understanding what's expected of them and that they have the tools to be successful in their job. If we're asking them to do something, we want to make sure that they have what they need to be able to do those things. When you move up then questions 3 through 6 then focus on the individual. So those are all about that individual and their relationship with the organization. Questions 7 through 10 then focus on teams. And questions 11 and 12 then are growth beyond the team. So question 4, recognition, yes, is low. What I would say is this tends to be low even for some of my best clients that are highly engaged, just because we're not very good at recognizing one another as a culture. We're not good at that.
Is that a Milwaukee thing, or?
No, it's not even specific to Milwaukee. I would say that it's a U.S. cultural piece. We're just not good at saying thanks and recognizing one another. The other piece of this is when you look at that particular question, it says, in the last 7 days. So these questions and statements are very, very specific. And it's intended to be that way because of the research behind this, again, is it's meant to separate high-performing teams from all others. So when they ask this question, I've received recognition in the last month, the last 2 weeks. They didn't see that separation. It's those individuals that are parts of culture that it's just a part of their everyday that they really start to see that separation. So if I were prioritizing where to put my effort, I would absolutely continue to focus on making sure we're setting really clear expectations. So helping with 1 and 2, and then moving into those individual pieces. So what are we doing to equip our managers to talk about how best to recognize an employee? How do they like to be recognized? It's not just about the money and the pay schedule, but it's about connecting with the employee, figuring out what's important to them. How do they like to be recognized? Is it, communicating with Rebecca and having an organization-wide communication? Is it just one-on-one recognition? Those types of conversations, you'll notice, really start to feed into some of these other questions about somebody cares about me and they want to develop me and I have the opportunity to do my best. So those are some of the areas that I would, from an overall perspective, look to continue to focus on over the next year. Obviously, it's going to be dependent by area specifically, because the real value gets into where you can have your closest to you responses, and what an individual manager might do may look very different.
And then, Mr. Chair,
Please, go ahead.
you have the materials and equipment one. I have the materials and equipment, I need to do my work right. Do we ask them, what materials or equipment do you feel you're missing?
That's a great follow-up question, because the other piece of that, it could also just mean access to information for
Right.
some folks. So it doesn't always mean that it's the next, piece of large equipment down at DPW. It could be access to information that's already existing, or something along those lines. So it's absolutely a conversation starter, or a great follow-up question to be having, so that you can act on it.
And do our departments have team meetings in general? Do they ask these kind of questions? Do they have suggestion boxes? Do they have?
When we instituted a new performance management system, we created the goals and then the check-ins that supervisors are supposed to be checking in quarterly with their employees, and those are things that they should be discussing with them. The majority of departments have meetings, but not all of them.
And sometimes they're probably focused on the work task and less.
Right. It's
How's
more
your weekend?
tactical. Yeah.
All right, what do you need this week, that kind of thing. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, thank you. Can I have a motion to place on file?
So moved.
Second.
And any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, and then item 2, yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Item 2, discussion regarding hiring an outside consultant to assist with negotiating a new agreement for the support of printers and copiers. And I just said item 2, what I mean is item 9. We have a two-
Secondly.
Thanks, I'm looking all
Yeah,
over.
next to it, item 9 is our second item. I'm sorry for confusing everybody just there. Tony,
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Tony Warkacheski, Director of IT for the City of West Allis. If I could have a moment just to comment on the previous topic. I used to work for one of those companies that was always the best places to work. I can tell you it takes a lot of time to get to a place like that. It doesn't happen in 2 years. But I think the progress I've seen happen here in 2 years is pretty phenomenal, essentially with the leadership team of the city. I can tell you when I started here 2 years ago, it was interesting to work with my peer group. It's a much different vibe today than it was 2 years ago, and I think a lot of you get credit for that, as well as the mayor and Rebecca.
And I almost said Northwestern Mutual also.
It's not the best place, but anyways, I regress. So I sent you guys materials last Thursday to kind of cover this topic. I don't have copies of the slides. If you just give me 2 minutes, I'll kind of hit the elevator story here and then answer any questions you may have. So back in 2014, my predecessor, Jim Jandovich, did a pretty bold and I think a good thing for the city. We outsourced the procurement and the support of all our printers and copiers for the city. And you fast forward to today, and just about everybody does that. Organizations like ourselves, we don't have the capacity, the capital to buy the equipment. We don't have the skills to maintain it. We don't have the scale to feed it all the toner and other devices to keep these things running. So Without a doubt, continuing to outsource the printers and the copiers for the city is the way to go. Impact Networking was the name of the company that was chosen to provide those services for us. I think they've done a really good job, especially on the servicing side of things. The folks I talk to who work for the city that use the printers every day are really pleased with the quality of support that they get from Impact. Maybe on the flip side of that, we spend a lot of money with Impact. And when I started here 2 years ago, Rebecca made it pretty clear that she thought that there was some money that could be saved as we enter into this next version of outsourcing. So those lease agreements we signed with Impact are 5 years old. They're coming due at the end of this year. It gives us a great opportunity to take a fresh look at this space and see if we can save the city some money. So there's really a two-pronged approach on how we were going to save the city some money. Number one was just to lower the amount of printing and printing devices we have in our organization. So you can kind of already check that one off. I've been working throughout the year with my peers to look at creative ways to lower the number of devices we have in the city. Conservatively right now, we have a plan to reduce the amount of devices by a third. I'm not ruling out getting even more aggressive than that and getting to like a 50% reduction. I keep looking at Rebecca because that's her number. We're trying to get towards that number. We have a lot of printers that sit on people's desks. We're trying to not have that happen and go to more centralized printers that are kind of in central areas that more people share. Of course, you can't do that too much because then you're taking people have to walk further. So there's a balancing point. We're trying to balance the number of devices versus how far people have to go to get their print. But we've conservatively already trimmed the fleet of devices, if you would, by a third. And we asked Impact, our incumbent, how much money would we save if that's what we did. If we just renewed with you and we reduced by a third, and they've already given us estimates as much as $4,000 a month could be trimmed from our monthly bill. So we're already on the path to reduce our costs going into 2020. What I'm looking for your support on is the second prong approach to saving some money, and that is just doing a little bit of a more thorough and aggressive approach to how we negotiate the next contracts with whoever we pick as the next provider. We will be going through an RFP process. We will be putting this out to bid. I will tell you that when I looked at the contracts that were signed 5 years ago, they're some of the most complex contracts I've ever seen. If any of you have ever leased a car, that can kind of be complex. So imagine doing that for like 100 printers. These are very complex contracts, and I think it really behooves the city to get somebody in here who understands this industry, advocates for us, and helps us execute the RFP, and then in return, I think further gets us better pricing from whoever we pick as the next provider. The thing that you might want to consider is how this consultant would be compensated. So we basically would take a baseline. If we decide we need only 80 printers instead of 120, we do a baseline using the state contract of what that would cost us if we just bid this out and took the state contract guidelines, and that creates a baseline. This contractor would come in and negotiate to a lower point than that, and he would ask in return a third of the savings that he's negotiated on our behalf. We would end up getting the other 2/3 for the term of the contract, which is going to be probably 5 years again. So it's a little bit of a different way of compensation. He's not going to come in here and charge us $200 an hour and count the hours. He's going to take all his compensation off the savings he generates for us on our behalf. So what I really want to do today was just kind of give you the idea that we're considering this. If you like how it sounds, we would come back on October 15th with a formal resolution and the contracts to sign this consultant up to help us with this negotiation.
Any discussion? Sounds good to me. That's my discussion. Alderman Vitale.
I love anything you said, Tony, really. In the past, we had the prior people that were doing service, how that was set up. I mean, were they charged by the time when they came, or they just was a set fee? I mean, I think it was kind of dramatic effect on the budget, really.
I think before we had Impact doing the majority of our devices, we had IT doing a little bit more of the day-to-day support. It's true that my department really doesn't get as much involved in that as we used to, but those folks have become busy working on other efforts for the city. I still think we did have other companies that did servicing for some of our printing devices. So Xerox and Canon and Ricoh and some of the companies we buy products from. I think we had miscellaneous contracts throughout the city. And to some degree, we still have a handful of them where the manufacturer of the device would actually come in and service it and then charge us a fee based on how many hours they were here to fix it. So it was kind of a little bit of IT and a lot of other vendors. And really, that's another opportunity for us here is we really want to get one vendor to service all the devices for the city, not have one do 85% and then another 4 or 5 do a little bit more. Hope I answered your question, Vince. Okay.
Any further discussion? I think the consensus is,
Okay.
sounds good, Tony, yeah.
Thank you.
Please, go ahead. Yeah, we heard saving money and,
Appreciate it.
yeah. Yeah, thank you, Tony. All right, and I think we should act on that, to place this item on file. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Weigel, second from Alderman Seplesky. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Now we'll go back to our agenda in the correct order. And that is now item number 2, a charter ordinance number 24, increasing the total number of aldermanic districts and reducing the number of alderpersons per aldermanic district. It's Alderman Barzak's idea. I'll start the discussion, and yeah, I think this is definitely worthwhile, worth pursuing. We are an outlier. It's us and Wauwatosa with 2 alderpersons per district, and I don't know of any other municipality with 2 alderpersons per district.
Brookfield does.
And Brookfield, thank you, Alderman Chaplesky. And yeah, I think it's always odd explaining to folks that, well, I'm the alderman, but also there's another alderman. It would seem to me that that the proposal as put forward by Alderman Barzak is a good idea and something we should work toward. Alderman Chaplesky.
The only thing I have to disagree with that is that, you know, when you're in a district, somebody calls you up and you don't give them the right answer, and scream and yell at you and hang up. Well, another issue comes up, they don't want to call you again, so they can call the other alderman, which they can, you know, work with for the remainder of the time that's there. So I think, and plus you always have an alderman sitting on a committee, you know, one person from each district. So I don't know how the other one would work, but you know, I don't hear a lot of complaints when they say there's 2 aldermen of every district, and let's face it, I don't think it costs that much more. So I don't know if there'd really be a major cost savings. So.
Alderman Barzak.
I'll give a little bit of history behind it. The first thing that during discussion with other alderpersons, et cetera, other people in the city is, I felt the actual workload for the 2 aldermen per district has dropped especially since we've gotten with, you know, IT direct complaints going, you know, right into bins, et cetera. I'm getting less calls, a lot less calls. And I just felt that the workload for 2 aldermen per district just seems to be, it's not what it was, I think, even 10 years ago. So that was one of the reasons, is that the workload is less, and I think 7, a smaller district, 1 alderperson can easily handle that. And of course, again, there's only 2 other municipalities that I know of that have 2 aldermen per district. Everybody else has 1. The second one was, and it ties in with the raise part, is with the raise of the money going up, there'd be, with the 7 at the end of the 8 years, there'd be either a wash or a savings with the bump up in the salary. So when you take the salary bump up and then you reduce it to the 7 alderpersons, you end up at about your same pay scale, or even a possible little bit of savings. So it kind of all coincided together, that it kind of made it logical to reduce the number of alderpersons to 7. My opinion, in 2024, I'm not going to be there to run for that position and set up with the committees. But my feeling would be that all 7 alderpersons would be at every committee. And the committees would meet as scheduled rather than having recess. You still could have the recess ones, but you'd have 4 separate committees. You wouldn't have 5 aldermen here and 5 aldermen over there. At the same time, when that does happen, I don't know what's going on over there, and they don't know what's going on over here. So you kind of start setting up almost a committee as a whole for every single committee, whether it's finance, public works, et cetera. All 7 aldermen would be on all the committees. That's the way I would see it, rather than having 5 and 2 not on a committee. That particular districts wouldn't be represented on the discussions for that particular committee. So the workload would get a little tougher with the 7 alderpersons, because now they would have to attend all the meetings. But I can then foresee at that particular point that the meetings would actually, like Public Works hasn't met. I think if we met twice last year, that probably was a lot as an actual meeting. And I think we did them at 6 o'clock before the council meeting when we did that. I know finance meets regularly, license and health literally has to meet all the time. The other committees, so that would have been my opinion, is that there would be a split. All 7 alderpersons would be on every committee, and then that way every district is being represented at every one, and everybody is in tuned. And then again, with the cost savings part, with the bump in the raise over the 8-year period, it would be basically a wash. That there wouldn't be any increase, there wouldn't be any decrease. That was the logic behind it. So,
Mr. Chair,
Alderman May.
I can see arguments on both sides.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a little bit tough. One thing I have enjoyed, I've enjoyed working with Alderman Barzak. Where I'm weak, he's strong, and perhaps where he's got some weaknesses, I've been able to maybe pick up some as well. And it's worked out really well having 2 aldermen per district. Or if someone doesn't like me, they'll call him, or someone doesn't like him, they'll call me. So it works out nice that way. But going to the 1 alderman per district, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. My bigger concern is the number, actually, going to 7. I don't like the idea of consolidating power into fewer hands. I'd rather keep it, 9 or 10 alder people per district, and just smaller districts to make up. And in terms of the salary, in some ways, the alderman this term took a major hit when we changed the health care. And so if the salary did go up, I would see it as, I think in the end, it would either be a wash or the taxpayers are still saving, on your proposal for aldermanic pay. So I'd prefer to see more alder people. I could go either way on the number of people per district, but not. I think 7's a little too small for my taste. Like I say, the more people you have, you also get a better geographic representation, right? Right now we're spread pretty big districts. Smaller your district, the more focused you can be to the interests of that district, that smaller geographic area. So.
I think Kale wants to say something.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. City Attorney.
While this item is being debated, I thought it'd be also helpful to give the committee some information on timing. In 2021, the city will be required to redraw its wards and redraw its districts based on the federal census of 2020. And so, given how...
Can you talk a little louder because I'm getting old,
Sure thing, Vince. So in 2021, there's going to be redistricting in this city and everywhere else in the state of Wisconsin based on the 2020 census. And at that point in time, all the wards will have to be redrawn within the city based on the new population estimates within the city. Every 10 years this happens. So because of the way that the cycle works for alderpersons in West Allis, which in 2020 is the next election, which will go till 2024, so that means redistricting happens in between the next term. If salary is to be discussed for that term, that has to be decided by December 1 of this year. And that cannot be changed then until 2024,
2024.
Correct, yes. So it's going to be 4 years until the salary can be looked at again, which is why it would be convenient to set the salary schedule as well as decide whether there's going to be 10 alderpersons with 5 districts or 9 alderpersons in 9 districts, or 7 in 7 districts, whatever the number is the council decides, it'd be helpful because then in 2021, when we're redrawing the wards, it'll be easier to draw that as for a number that works based on what the council's intent is. So that's why this item's coming pretty early overall, and there's no requirement to make any changes now. Aldermanic districts can be altered every 2 years, and the number of alders can be changed every 2 years. But because of that election cycle for alderperson, and with the wards being redrawn, it's an opportunity to do it in a very convenient and efficient way for administration. So that's a good reason to discuss this now and at least indicate if there is any desire from the majority of the council as to how to do this. And just so you know the numbers, upon redistricting in 2021, it will take 6 alderpersons to pass a particular map. However, if you want to do it outside of that range, it will take 7 votes to do the charter ordinance and also to do the changes in the district boundaries. And it will actually take 8 votes to set salaries. So and those are hard numbers. Those are not percentages, they're the numbers that need to happen. So just so you're aware of what the numbers are and what needs to happen.
Alderman
Sure.
Vitale was next.
Yeah, I have a little concern about that, really. The question stands really, the state, they made some redistricting, the last 4 or 5 years, Congress did the same, And I'd like to ask, how much really the taxpayer save, really, by adding more district or expanding their district, whether it's a congressional or assembly, what was really the gain of the citizen or the taxpayers, how much money really they save, I believe it's zero. So the question is, for many years, we have a council of 10 people. He's been working so graciously all this time, really. I mean, anybody can propose anything. That's our rights, democracy, But in fairness, what really would be the gain by having 7 aldermen or redistricting the areas? How much, if I was making $40,000 a year, maybe I say, son of a bitch, I'm making too much money for the job, really. I do, and understand. Sorry that I use that language,
Edit that out later.
But-
Not a barber shop.
Let's face it, we not, for years that I've been on the council, we're not getting we got some benefits, which is great, that's fine. Previous aldermen, they enjoyed that just as well, but when they were gone, they would get their pensions and everything else. So, and that's where I see what really going to gain within our city. They're gonna benefits the taxpayers, but reducing the amount. To me, it's totally unfair. West Allis is over 60,000 populations. Brookfield is around 35-some thousand. Greenfield is around 30-some thousand just as well. I thought other communities within the area. So we have a 60-some thousand people. So the first district, it has over 10,000 people. That's what we have, over 10,000 people. So I'm getting calls, and I call the yard, and that's our records. I get at least 2 or 3 calls per day, every day, at least 3 of them. Maybe because they like me, maybe because they, like you said, Michael, you said because you don't like the other aldermen, they think it's your birthday. Vice versa, really, or vice versa. That's what the beauty, I believe, for a small community like West Allis, which is one of the largest one, just as well in Wisconsin. And to me, what are we looking for? Is it just to save maybe some dollars, I don't see it's gonna be really, the city is gonna exhaust the taxpayers in West Allis, really. I don't see that. If you wanna talk about taking some of the benefits away, well, maybe that's where maybe we should think about it, you know? But why I can't talk smart now, because I was over 30 years in the council, now I can say, well, I can take the benefits away. I mean, I could propose an ordinance for that, right?
We already did.
Yeah.
They're already done.
Yeah, okay, but what I'm saying, that's what it is. I mean, to me, that's totally really inappropriate, from my opinion.
Alderman Weigel.
A comment and a question. Gary's right, the job really has changed in the last 10, 15 years. This is not so much a resident service thing. It's changed, it's lessened in some senses, but it's become more difficult in others. I think there's a higher level of understanding. Certainly the world's gotten more complicated, governing's gotten more complicated. I mean, it's a different kind of job, but I think we should certainly take a look at a change, because this would be the time to do it. You know, our next swing at the bat would be another 10 years, really. I mean, although we could do it any time. But I have a question for Kale. If we decide to change boundaries of districts, and the change is implemented midterm, is it possible that somebody could be like redistricted out of their, if you the line changes to the point where you're no longer living in the district you represent? How does that work?
By state law, the council, as it would exist on the next election in 2020, would continue to 2024 no matter what happens with redrawing the districts midterm.
Okay.
Those districts are redrawn for the purpose of other elections.
Also, it's like, they would really go into effect the next election.
2024.
In 2024.
For
Yeah, I understand.
alderperson. If there was a state election in 2022, that would be under the new districts, if
Right.
there was
The
redrawn for
aldermanic
districts.
district. So,
But the entire council, as it was elected in 2020, would continue, and even if someone were to resign or vacate their seat, there would be the ability to fill that seat midterm, even though there is no district today, they would use the old district boundaries to fill that seat.
and then what if we went to 4 districts with 2 in each? So we'd have a total of 8 alders. So we're not shrinking our number too drastically. Each district gets a little bit bigger. I just think it's all worth the discussion. I mean, yeah, it really could go a lot of ways, but it's
Legal
certainly.
issues, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Lysick was next, and then Rhodes. Sorry. Don't give me that look.
Either way on this. I mean, there's points both ways. I've been on the council a long time, and this issue has come up in the past. I know Alderman Rote and I serve the same constituency, and there's a lot of duplication of effort on. We get the same calls from the same people, the same emails from the same people, and he'll act on it, I'll act on it. See, he's doing it, he copies me, or I'll copy him, or we do something, we say, yeah, Alderman Rote called on that already, or he'll call and he'll say, I called on it already. So, you know, there's duplication of effort when you have 2 aldermen in the district. The other part of it is, you work with someone for 4 years, and then you're forced to run against that person in election. And, you know, that's difficult. And you can say you're not running against them, but when you're both on the ballot and there's other candidates on the ballot, you are running against that person. And like it or not, that's the facts. And quite frankly, I don't like it. I'd rather run on my own and have an opponent that you know, I like going around with Dan, and I'd sign his nomination papers and say, yeah, Dan, you're a good guy. But I'm not gonna go out and campaign for him, knock on doors for him. I'm knocking on doors for me, and he's knocking on doors for him. And anybody that runs against us is knocking on doors for themselves. So it would be much cleaner if there was 1 alderperson per district. As far as the workload goes, Gary is right. There's a lot less phone calls than there was years ago, but there's a lot more hours spent reading, coming to meetings, daytime meetings, a lot of changes in state law, federal law that affect us, that didn't affect us years ago. We've got so many development projects going on in this city that we're constantly being, you know, in meetings for, and special meetings for all the committees at one time or another to meet the speedy demands of the world today. Everybody wants things done in a hurry. I want to open my business faster than I did years ago. I want to do it tomorrow. Well, we try to respond to that and have special meetings where appropriate. So I think it's a good idea. Whether 7 is the right number, quite, my opinion, I would look at it and say, I'd rather see 8. But I'm not hard on that. I mean, if it's 7, it's 7. If it's 9, it's 9. If it's 10, it's 10. But I do think it should be 1 per district. And this is the absolute opportune time to do it, because we're gonna be redistricting anyway, and if you're gonna do it, you know, now is the time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, and again, I want to make it clear that all those changes would not happen until 2024. So whatever happens, that the next term all stays the same, 10 aldermen, 2 per district. Even if the pay raise, which we're going to talk about, I think, that would take effect, but it wouldn't be till 2024 that change would take place. So
Alderman Rote and then Alderman
Okay.
Chaplin.
And all of my calls, I give them Alderman Vitale's phone number, so that's why you have such an increase. No, the district maps don't have to be done until 2021, correct?
Correct.
Because we did, in 2011, we remapped this city twice. Which I sat next to the city clerk, and I don't think we said 3 words in all the time I was alderman, but she was really hacked off about that, big time. So we might want to consider that too. And then, just some of my notes, the committee assignments too are a big thing. You know, how are we going to do that? And with it, as long as I've been an alderman, I've never seen 2 aldermen missing at one council meeting yet. You know, if one is missing, you're not being represented technically at that meeting, at that council meeting.
And Alderman Chaplin?
Question for Carol. Now, so what you're saying is that we basically have to, this council has to make policy for what we're going to do in 2024. Right, did I
You have the
understand that right?
chance to do so. You have an opportunity to do so if you'd like.
Right.
You don't have to. The only thing that you're bound by December 1 is related to salaries between now and 2024. That's something that needs to happen in the next, I think, 3 meetings is how much you have left.
We could do this in 4 years if we wanted to.
But as far as the number of districts and the number of alderpersons per district, that can be changed in 2021 or even after that. But the salaries will not be able to be changed after December 1 of this year. So if you want to link those 2 together, they'd all have to happen
But if you-
soon.
Okay, because that's when you redo it, a year after the census, is when you really do it, so. Because I know you only can do it once every 10 years.
For redrawing wards, yes.
Yes.
You can actually redraw aldermanic districts more frequently, but you cannot change wards unless a special event occurs, like merging with a city.
So if you're going to cut 2, you can't split a ward. Well, maybe you can.
The number of wards will be important to draw, and that's also why I want to know what numbers you're looking at for next year, because if it goes from 5 districts to 7, I'll have to obviously draw the number of wards divisible by 35, because it's the only way to make that work.
Right.
If you go to
That's-
8 or 10, or however you want to do it, I just need to know the numbers so I can know what's the minimum number of wards I have to draw so that the clerk has the least amount of different ballots to produce.
Okay, and the other thing is that, as Alderman Barzil mentioned, that every meeting has the entire council there. Can you do that?
Yes.
Committee of whole, so the council is meeting at every single meeting.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's not, well, I mean, there's no obstacles to that.
Nope.
Okay.
Not legally, no.
I knew there was.
Alderman May?
Yeah, a little bit different than Alderman Lice. I think we agree on most things, but one of the things I did like about having 2 alder people per district is it introduces a level of civility into an election. You know, in the end, you're gonna end up working with one of those other people. And so you're less likely to go after them and attack them. And I think that's one of the reasons politics in general has been pretty clean in West Allis. You don't have that, you know, that chomping at each other's ankles at election time. So again, I could go either way on that. Again, I know we're saying linking it to pay, and obviously pay has something to do with the number of older people we have. But again, for me, it's again centralizing that power. I prefer to keep 8 to 10. And whether that's, I think 4 districts feels almost too big, because what would happen is, and let's say there's 2 people who win and one person decides to do nothing and the other person's basically got 15,000 people they're doing the work for.
Well, you got 12,000 now.
12,000 now, which
You got
is
half of 12, well. you
well,
got
yeah,
12,000, yeah.
hypothetically, Gary has 12 and I have 12, but you do the math, divide it out, it should be 6 each, but hypothetically, we both now have 12. Yeah, and I don't think we have to decide this tonight, but it'd be good to have an idea of where people want to go. What other, I hate to introduce another little wrinkle into this, but I'm gonna, in Wauwatosa, what they do is they have 3-year terms. I'd prefer to keep it at the 4. But
Staggered?
they stagger the terms, and so every 2 years, one of them is up for a 4-year term. So, another thing to throw out there.
Alderman Lysick.
That's been discussed in the past alderman meeting.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, which alderman in the
Who
district
goes
wants
first?
to take the 2-year term?
The person who loses the previous
Alphabetical.
election.
Lower vote.
The lower vote
I
one,
know,
yeah.
but it's not a popular thing to do.
Or you could just make one of them 6 and one of them 4.
I thought alpha,
When you go to the phase change.
Oh, they used to make one of them sick. I thought you said
6.
alphabetical.
alphabet.
Hey, I'm sitting right here.
I know.
Kale, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, and to the committee's benefit, there is a law that does allow specifically changing it to staggered 4-year terms. 2/3 of all members could do it by ordinance, so it's not necessarily that intends to do that.
Our statutes thought of everything for a change. Boy.
I've been electing people for a long time, so luckily they've had a lot of practice. And a lot of things have come up.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman May.
could I ask what's broken that needs fixing with this?
Alderman Barzak.
Didn't get it tied into the, which is the next item on the agenda. It tied into the bump in the pay raise. So it went into there. So when came up with a number of what that increase would be, and then the 4-year increment of increases, which would be in the 2.5% raise, which is exactly about what all the other city employees are getting. It went into that. So when after 8 years of that pay, to reduce the 3 alderpersons would wash that out, so there wouldn't be an increase. It would be the same. So that's where that came in. It kind of all tied together to try to keep the salaries in check, yet given an increase. Because my personal feeling is that, the benefits have been taken away. And the bump in that, in the increase, that big bump for the next term, hopefully offsets some of that. And it also makes it more people to run for the position. I think even right now, we're having difficulty getting people to actually run for the position of alderpersons. In a couple of different districts, you get somebody to run, but it's not attractive. And I think that higher salary makes it attractive. The last 3 aldermen was the savings to be able to justify that increase over the 8 years.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Root.
has there been any thought of, excuse me, even number versus odd number, tiebreaker? I'm just throwing it out there.
May I answer?
And then the mayor always presided and was the tiebreaker
And
vote.
the 7 was, again, after talking to some staff, et cetera, that 7 was that nice number, so there wouldn't be that tie. Now, if an alderman's missing, it's possible you could have a 3-3 vote for 6, then the mayor would have to come into it, or somebody abstains because a conflict of interest. You've had it a couple times. I've had it in the past with licensing. So now you only have 6 voting, and if it was a 3-3, the mayor still would be tied in there. But that 7 was the, in opinions, was a really nice number because of not having to have a tiebreaker.
Okay,
It eliminates that.
is 9 a nice number?
9 would be just fine. But again, it offsets that savings after those 12 years of the increase.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Alderman May.
And I understand we want to be fiscally responsible. Again, I see it by dropping aldermanic contributions, that now they have to contribute 50% versus, what was it before? I can't recall what it was before, the contribution. 20%? Oh, 12. It was 12% now it's about 50%. The increase in pay, I think, makes up for that So I think we've already, plus the fact that now that you pay 50% in your healthcare goes up way faster than the 2% per year. So either way, I think even if we kept it at 10, we'd still be saving long run. So I don't do this just because of the pay. But, you know, nine would be 7,500 per district, I think. Is that 60,000 divided by 9? 7,500? I think.
6,800, 6,700.
66, 67,
9, oh yeah, of course.
3 sixes and a
Like one of
7.
those phones that has a calculator on it.
All right, got the answer already. Good.
Did you want to share it?
No, Rebecca had it.
I didn't hear
It's
it.
about 6,700.
If it's gonna be
Oh,
7,
okay.
they have to be individual districts. Even 8, I think, had to be individual. I just can't imagine 1/4 of a city represented by 2 people sharing the same district. That just sounds like a lot of workload. I'm just throwing pros and cons back and
Right,
forth
we're
here.
just-
Yeah,
7 felt to be the most workable.
yeah.
That it wasn't over, but yet, you know, it was workable. That's why the number came up.
Alderman Chaplesky.
Okay, so you're saying that this council, once again, has to determine the wage for the 2024 council?
No.
No.
I misunderstood that.
2020.
2020.
2020, I understand, okay. I
That's
thought
only
that,
for 4
but you
years.
had said for the 24. Yeah, I thought it was only
Yeah,
until the next.
The pay increase is only for the next term.
Correct. So
And
you,
the
if you
next
want,
council would determine.
if the council wants to set the salary for 2020 to 2024, that 4-year term, that has to be done in the next 3 meetings.
Oh, yeah,
but-
that's what I misunderstood. 20 to 24.
Correct, sorry, I probably said it,
thought-
I said it.
thought 20
that
and
way.
20.
Nope,
Okay.
just that range has to be
Good.
set. You won't get a chance to look at salary again until end of 2023.
Right, okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
Um,
another thing to think about is we keep thinking about the structure we have now with our committees, but we could hypothetically, say we had 9 older people, well, that'd be kind of weird. You bring it down to 3 committees. You could bring it down to 2 committees. We could have A&F, Safety and Development and Advisory in one, License and Health and Public Works in another. I mean,
As long as we're all meeting
and just
anyways.
combine them and call one administration and one licensing and public works or whatever. Yeah, I don't think we should let that limit ourselves. Has that been thought about at all, internally, at City Hall at all? Has there been any thought to ways to combine committees? We could go down to 4 now.
I mean, just, I worked for a few municipalities who do it all very differently. None have ever done the recess meetings before I started working here.
Mhm.
So it was not uncommon for people to serve in a mixed group. So if there were 9, to have maybe 4 committees of 6, and then 3 people are not on the other 4 committees. So it works out overall. You can work the math any way you want ultimately on that question. But if you want to continue the recess meeting format, obviously your choices are a little more limited in that either you should come up with a number that's committee of the whole for efficiency's sake, or you should have a number that can be split into 2 even committees to be efficient if you want to continue that practice. It would just make it less efficient to have one person waiting off to the side for the committee to be done and then jump on the next committee and then another group is waiting. So it's really up to your discretion how you want to handle that.
Alderman Chaplesky.
Okay, so how are we gonna proceed with this? We've got a short period of time in order to do this. Sitting in a meeting, everybody throwing out suggestions.
All we
isn't
need is the
gonna work.
wage. That's all we have to settle
No,
now
we
is
don't.
wages.
No, no.
Yeah, that's
We
what-
we would have to settle.
And item
if we're
3
gonna-
is, we're not talking the wage right now, that's
No.
item 3, we're talking item 2 on our agenda.
Right.
But they're
But
tied
no, I'm
together.
saying, but if we have to say, if we're gonna do redistricting, and we're gonna be cutting the number down to 7 districts, we're gonna have to make the decision by December 1st, just to make it work.
No.
Am I correct?
No, Mr. Chairman?
But, I mean, but I'm saying by wards.
Well, you'll,
Kale's answering, that's all right. And
So-
then Gary Barzak.
if redistricting occurs and the number of alderpersons declines, those alderpersons will retain the same salary as what was set.
Right.
It would just be a lower salary, but more
I'm
work.
not talking about salary, I'm saying the reapportionment of the districts. Like you had said, if we're gonna go to 7, you're gonna need more smaller wards, so it can be, made evenly, because everybody's supposed to have the same amount of population. So we would have to make those decisions now, if we're gonna do that, before you do the reapportionment.
Only if you want to link salary to that decision.
But we don't have to.
If you don't have to. You can wait until 2021 to redo the wards, to set the number of alderpersons and set the number of districts all at once in 2021. It's just that whatever you do in that year, that number of elected officials
Right. Well, no, I
will be
understand.
paid a certain rate that's set today.
Right, I understand.
And Alderman Barzak, and then Alderman
Exactly,
Weiss.
just to try to clarify it, the salary must be set in the next,
Right. I
next
understand, I
meeting.
understand. The
That
salary,
has to be done.
I wasn't referring to salary.
The second part of it, we can say, let's hold this, and let's let the new council elected in April of next year, we'll hold this part of it, and then we'll discuss it with the new council and decide how to redistrict at that time. He still has the time, Kale still has the time to be able to draw those maps. So that part of it does not have to be done in the next 3 meetings. That part can say, we want to take it into consideration, and we want to put strong consideration into it, but we still can act on the salary part, and don't have to act on the redistricting in the next 3 meetings.
And Alderman Weiss.
Just to be clear, you can't even look at the ward maps until after the census. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the
Right,
census,
well, that's,
to determine the population, so.
I agree.
You're talking
That's
about
why, but,
twenty
like I said-
twenty-one before you can even look at the ward maps. So, you know, you have all next year to make a decision on the number of council members that you want.
Don't disagree.
I think Alderman Barzak was bringing this up as a lead into a salary increase and what can be done, and, you know, putting some food for thought out there as to, you know, we've got some possibilities, what should we be doing? Maybe 10 is the right number, I don't know.
okay, that's good.
Yeah, definitely can be helped.
Right, yeah, Alderman May.
I think if we're gonna keep 2 people per district, we should keep it to 10 alder people. 5 districts, it seems to work. If we're gonna go to single districts, I'd say I'd prefer no less than 8, but is there a general feeling? Because I think the number is gonna be the harder, there's more options with a number. What, is there any preference on 2 versus 1?
I like 1 and 7 or 8.
I like 1 or 7 or 8 too.
As well.
1, 7, or 8.
Me too.
All right, so I think we're down to 1, and then it sounds like a general consensus would be 1 per district, and then I'd say no less than 8. I'd prefer to keep it 10, but 8 would give you the 7,500 people per
10's not
district.
saving any money.
But you-
Still saving it.
We can save money other ways. We
Yeah.
could say no healthcare at all. I mean, I don't want to do this because of the idea of we have to save money. I want to do it because we think it's the right thing to do. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, if I may. None of us are thinking about adding. We're not talking about going to 11 or 12.
No,
I think,
I'm
I think it's, I think we see that as a, I'm not gonna say no-brainer, but as much as the job is. I like the idea. I hadn't thought about that, the civility question though on the election. That, you're right, because
It's going to get nasty.
it could. It could.
I think it will.
Well, you
We'll
gotta
see.
look at all the other municipalities, there's only 3 that have 2 aldermen, all the other ones don't. You know, I don't know what goes on out there in Racine, you know, there, it's
Yeah.
Green Bay or.
I'm focusing too much on our big neighbor, our suburb to the east.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Gail, yes.
Just another thing for consideration, since this is in the early stages, is there are other communities that do have at-large councils.
Reading it.
I don't like that idea at all.
No.
You get 10 people elected from one neighborhood.
Just want to make sure all
Yeah.
considerations on the table.
And the other
Well,
part,
I think
just-
you heard
yeah,
us on that
districts are
one.
good for minority representation also. If you have a significant minority community in a part of a city, well, then that area is represented. Okay,
Chair?
yes.
With what we're talking about, if we have the whole council meeting, as being members of each committee, wouldn't we have more meetings?
We would.
Possibly.
Gary
And
wants to
we'd
give
all
us more
belong
work.
To each committee. And also, I'm thinking of the committee assignments. Some of the aldermen have 2 and 3 committee assignments. Some of the aldermen don't have any committee assignments. So out of fairness, basically, that would be bothersome to me. because you would be attending all these extra committee assignments that we are given. Plus, being on each committee, it's four committees instead of 2 or 3. I mean, there's two sides to this change. I'm open to change on one side, but on the other side, I'm thinking basically, it's not broke, why are we trying to fix it? I'm open to actually the suggestion. I think it's a good thing to think of different ways we could be more efficient. I agree, we basically have 2 aldermen now working. It's duplicating what we have, because most of the calls I get, they've already called Kevin, and 2 people are working on the same problem, which I think is redundant. But as it is, I agree with Gary, and Alderman Weigel, we're getting less phone calls. We're getting a lot less phone calls now that it's being taken over by building inspection. But the committee assignments are in addition to the rest of the committees that we would be put on with only 7 aldermen. That's kind of a heavy load for some people. So that might be something to consider also. Unless we had each alderman serve on additional committees instead of 1 alderman or 2 aldermen serving on 3 committees. Spread it around a little bit, but that basically would be a call by the mayor. So, but I certainly am open to additional ideas. I think we're a wise council, and we're open. I think we're all open-minded to think of different ideas. So I respect Alderman Barzak for bringing forth his idea, because it's something that we can consider.
Thank you. Alderman May.
I'm sorry for taking up so much time, but just something to think about there, Rosie. Let's say we did 1 alderperson per district, and we did 9 districts. We could go with 3 committees. We could go administration and finance and advisory, combine them into 1. License and health, there's a busy workload, maybe keep them as 1. And public works and safety and development on another. And then each alderperson serves on 2 of those committees. Now, your district isn't represented on all 3, but certainly you can come to the meetings, and you have a say when everything comes to council anyway. And so what we could do is we could write, I think right now in the ordinance, it's written where every person shall be put on committees. Like, it's not just 1 alderperson representing all. I thought it's in our ordinances, so we could change that too. I kind of like the idea of the 9 and going with the 3 committees with 2 people on, or, each person gets 2 committee assignments. But
That was Rose.
we've narrowed it down to 1 per district. Do we want to settle on a number? I mean, or when will we? I don't know.
Just, Mr. Chairman, and I'm gonna ask Kalis, if you went 8 alderpersons, could you go to 4-member committees rather than 5?
Certainly.
So, you do the same thing like we have right now, but you just have 4. So, 4 would be here, 4 would be there, 4 would be here, 4 would be there. So the 8 would work too.
My only hesitation with a 4-person committee is there's an opportunity for a lot of 2-2 ties. That's the only thing to consider with that.
Which was the same with the number 7, but.
Which is the same with the number 9 that I just proposed. You'd have 2 people on, you'd have 6-member committees.
6-person committees.
But at a broken tie, it still gets put to the council then,
Yeah, goes to council.
with no recommendation, right?
Well, I think we should hold this, and we'll discuss it further meetings. That's a big deal, big change for us. I think this was a very good and healthy discussion here on this issue here. So without objection, we'll hold it. Then moving on to item 3 is an ordinance to establish the salary for alderpersons for the city of West Allis for a 4-year term for 2020 through 2024. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Alderperson Barzak.
And again, working with the numbers, it was tied into the 7, but it really doesn't matter. the increase there was hopefully, again, with the benefits being dropped, would be that there'd be an increase there, a bump in the beginning to subsidize that for somebody that may be on the 50, that's gonna do that. And then the increase per year after that was right in line with the 2%, or 2.5%, which is kind of standard throughout the city. So that was the bumps for each year. So that's where those numbers came in.
And I'll add that it makes sense to me. What Alderperson Barzak is saying is right. And that was part of our discussion also in removing part of the health care that we received as a benefit as alderpersons, is that there would be perhaps a bump in salary in the future, and just that is at a level with the salary increases for city employees.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Unless I'm mistaken, I think, I hate to look right at Peggy, but I think that the amount that older people are now paying versus the amount that's being proposed in this ordinance, the city is still hypothetically saving compared to, so in the end, no matter what, going into the next term, aldermanic pay is less. When you look at the total benefit package, it's less going into the next term.
Yeah.
The only comment I would have is it is at 2.5, and I think our employees are getting 2. I think the mayor is proposed to have 2. So I would just suggest doing the 2% as well.
Alderman Barzak.
Okay, it actually, I think, if we go by percentage, it starts, and I don't have my math, I hope maybe Kale has it, it starts at like a 2.6, and then it drops to 2.5, and then down to a 2.3 in the last term.
Yeah.
The last year.
As presented, it varies from 2.5%. By the last year, it's about 2.3%.
So it's technically not 2.5.
Yeah.
But
I'd like to keep it on par with what.
And again, the other increase, the increases over that was to offset that losing that healthcare benefit. So, I mean, there still is big savings in that, they're getting a 2%, but they aren't losing their healthcare benefit. So, yeah, the argument can easily be made there. And that's why, where that number came up.
Okay.
Any further discussion on this?
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Weigel?
I know whenever we talk about raises for people in general, or at least when I talk about things, I want to know what the previous history is. And correct me if I'm wrong, our pay has been essentially frozen for 10 years? Is it 08?
It'll be 12, I think,
This is the wrong one.
But yes, you're right.
Yeah.
It's been,
I remember that time it was,
Been a while.
the recession was coming and we wanted to lead by example, which is why we froze our pay.
2000, well, it went, in 2007, it went to 73.84, then it went up, then down, then up a little, and then it rested at, in September 2010, that was when it's passed at 73.84, which is the current.
So 19 years.
19 years, yeah.
Is that right? No,
Or-
9
12.
years, 9 years.
9 years.
9 years.
Well, 10 years as of next April.
Yeah, 10 years, yeah.
And again, if I may just add in that this part of it really does have to be acted upon within the next review.
Couple meetings.
Any further discussion?
So what is the proposal?
Marty had it right there.
We had it on
Just wanna
the.
click.
And it
we had
was,
it on the
I did read it.
proposal.
I don't have it.
did that
Yeah.
By design, so everybody could see it.
So I can just read it.
Sure.
So that it would be $10,000 annualized from the beginning of the 2020 term through the end of the year 2020. Then there'd be $250 annual increases each year until it would reach $11,000 annually for 2024, and they would continue at $11,000 in perpetuity until the council would ever act again. So it would stay at $11,000 from 2024 on.
And you're basing this on, this is your proposal to just, that something's gonna happen in the future,
What?
that something's gonna happen.
Not necessarily. It's really based upon the benefit loss and the increase, and to make the position attractive to people who want to run for it.
My only, your last statement there, I don't know who runs for this position for the money. You know, I don't think anybody said, so I don't think I've ever talked to anybody about running is for the money. Maybe some people did for benefits, but, you know, I don't know for the money.
Well, I think your second statement made it real strong,
Yes.
very strong.
Right.
A lot of people ran for this position for the benefits.
Yeah, I do.
With that gone, now there's no reason to, so the increase in the salary hopefully will make it attractive to people to.
You just have to pay more. The benefit's still there, you just have to pay more for it. So the benefit wasn't taken away, but you just have to pay, which was a fair thing to do. So,
Okay, can I have a motion? I'll move for approval of the ordinance as, the proposed ordinance in item number 3.
Second.
There's a second from Alderman Weigel. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Alderman May?
You almost got me there. Again, everyone else, we're sticking at 2%. Our employees, we're sticking the mayor to 2%, everybody else. So with that, I'd like to propose an amendment. So I make a motion to amend the motion so that it would graduate by $200 per year instead of the $250, up to $10,800.
I'll second that motion. Second that. That was a song. That should be a song.
All right, we have a motion and a second on,
An emotion.
on the amendment. So now we're voting on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment?
It's $50, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
It's $50 a year difference.
It's
Yes.
200, yes.
It's $50 a year difference each year.
So instead of
Yeah.
10,250, it'd be 10,200.
Yeah.
The next would be 10.
Does our staff catch this and see what, thank you. All right, so on the amendment, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the amendment passes, and then the motion as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, ayes have it. It's 5-0. Thank you. All right, and then moving on to, that was item 3. Moving on to item number 4, ordinance to establish the salary of the mayor of the city of West Allis for a 4-year term commencing on the 3rd Tuesday in April 2020.
Move approval.
A motion from Alderman May. I'll second. And any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? I'm sorry for
No.
laughing. Very,
No.
I shouldn't laugh, I apologize. I just laughed because Marty nudged you. That's all.
I didn't quite touch it.
Okay,
I was
okay.
reaching.
I have my pen in my hand.
All
I
right.
thought you were gonna say something.
And so, yeah, item 4 passes 4-1. And item 5 is the ordinance to establish a salary range for the municipal judge for the city of West Allis.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move number 6 to be placed on file.
All right. We have a motion to place on file. Is there a second?
This is the old ordinance for older person pay. We just passed one.
Yep.
That's why.
Making this redundant. Thank you, Alderman May.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could perhaps we go back on item 5? I'd like to do work with this.
With the motion on the table, can we take the motion first since it's on the table?
Yeah, he's got a motion on the floor.
And
He's
I
got a motion
second
on
it.
the floor already.
Yeah, we got a motion on the floor.
Second.
And we got a motion and a second on, Alderman Vitale, you have your chance on the committee
Well, I think
floor,
I was
on the
quick
council
like this.
floor.
I mean, I figure that, but I understand the procedures, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just asking.
Mr.
to,
Chair, just a point of order. I think we can come back to it if it's okay with the chair.
Yeah.
I just think that since we're on number 6 now,
finish
it
six.
gets muddy by going back to 5 while we're in the middle of number 6. So I'd like to finish number 6 if you.
Okay,
And it's
that's
the
good.
Thank you to the members of the committee. It's the rule. All right, we have a motion and a second to place item 6 on file. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that item 6 is placed on file. And then we'll take a step back. Alderman Vitale, please.
Yeah, I have questions, whether the municipal judge, whoever is gonna be in the future and whoever is today, as far as I know, so his pay is graciously good. He only puts in, sometimes even not more at 10 hours per week. I mean, that's, I call it class or job, and being a municipal judge. So the questions that I have, so why wasn't that in discussions to, in reference of the municipal judge? You know, I mean, again, I don't care if it's Paul Murphy or anybody else, you know, nothing against the present municipal judge. But the fact stands, when you put less than 10 hours per week on a job, and you get all the benefits, just this way, nothing is being taken away at this point. We're talking about the aldermen. You guys been hammering about the aldermen positions tonight. So what I'm stating it is, nothing was proposed or discussed, really. I mean, that's less than a part-time job. People, they work at 40 hours a week. Many of them, they don't even have the health insurance. They don't have anything. So, and they're paid is probably $12, $11 per hour. We have somebody, of course, with education. He's a municipal judge. He's an attorney. I totally understand that. But he puts less than 10 hours per week, and he gets over $60,000 a year in pay, and plus benefits, and plus pension, just as well. Only for 10 hours, and we're not talking about that. Nobody wants to bring that up. You know, that's my biggest gripe, really. You guys are so concerned about the alderman job, but not any major concerns that we have within our community.
Alderman May.
Alderman Vitale, no one's raised that to me before. I've never heard of it. You sound angry with us, but
No,
you,
I'm not angry
you
with
didn't
you,
bring it
but
up during the
that's
discussion
fact.
either.
You know, there
If
is
you wanna discuss, I'm fine with
discussions
discussing
about
it,
the
but-
alderman, but nobody has the, even myself, I didn't bring that forward about a municipal judge that we have in West Allis, but we're so concerned about redistricting, change the aldermanic, amount, you know, that's fine. I mean, whatever the destiny or decision is gonna be made, I will acknowledge that, because that's the way democracy is. But when we talk about saving dollars in some critical area within our city, within our structure, certain things should be probably discussed and brought up just as well, really. I mean, when you have, we have a concern about saving dollars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Vitale. Anything else to come before the committee?
Is there number
Number
8?
And thank you, yeah, thank thank you to the committee also, and to Ms. Grill. Item 8, the retiree pilot for provisional fill-in work with incentives.
I've been discussing with the Public Works Director a possible pilot program for Public Works employees whereby we would have retirees fill in for perhaps on plow operations or when we need provisionals for mowing and things like that. Currently, we staff a lot for our highest need, and this would give us the ability to identify whether we need to continue at that highest level, but also maintain the services that we have. Additionally, the retirees' health care, the pre-65 retirees, as you're aware, sitting on this committee, consistently is going up between 7 and 20, sometimes in excess of 20%. We've been trying to mitigate that and not pass all the increases on to the retirees, but that gets more challenging every year. So what we're thinking about proposing is they would get a salary for filling in for these positions, but then we would also come up with some type of reduction or credit for their health insurance to incentivize them, and they're qualified in doing this type of job. So it's something we're looking at piloting before we wrote the program or policy. I wanted to ask the committee if there was a strong feeling against it, or if I should go ahead and we can try it out.
Mr. Chair? Alderman May, and then Alderman Weigel.
So would there be a limit on the number of hours they can work a week?
Yeah, that will be one of the things, because we wouldn't want to pay any WRS or things like
Right.
that. So we would have to establish those type of guidelines.
Would they be
for the-
paid by a 1099, or would they be put on the payroll as a
They would
W-2?
be, they would paid as an employee.
And then does this affect any of their previous union agreements where if they come back, now we have to, I like the idea, I just want to make sure we've kind of thought all this through.
The majority of people that would probably be interested in this would be somebody that probably retired since 2013, and we haven't had the contracts from them.
Alderman Weigel?
So you said provisional, so you mentioned lawn mowing, and I know there was a hard, so this would be
We could
replacing some
prob-
of those college jobs that have been, college-age jobs that have been so hard to fill lately.
We could look at doing that too, yeah, and then we could keep up with the mowing, which we had a significant challenge with, yes.
And they wouldn't be like traditional employees, it's like if we don't need them, if it doesn't snow at all, we don't get to pull out, bring our retired driver in,
Correct.
cost us nothing.
Right, so my thought is, and we haven't worked out everything, but that people would sign up for days that they might be interested in or available, and then we would call them in, kind of like a substitute teacher.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Root?
and you mentioned snow plowing a couple times. Now, I'm a retired snowplow guy, and I live in Rhinelander. Year-round now. And you call me.
You
I mean,
bet.
how does that work? I mean,
Still have to come
and
down right, you wanna get paid to
and
go.
again, hypothetical, it's, you know, we have the 30-minute for the,
Oh, well, as long as you can get here in a timely manner, we
You
could
watch the
put-
weather, it's gonna snow in
Yeah,
Milwaukee, I'm gonna
so,
drive down from Rhinelander, they're
I
gonna need
just-
me.
We'd probably put a requirement that if you don't come for the day that you sign up, that would it would take away from
That
some of the
was kind of-
credits, yes. So you can't
Something to
say
think
you're gonna
about.
be there and then don't show up. We need reliable
right.
people,
So you want a guy from Fond du Lac rather than Rhinelander?
perhaps.
I'm kidding.
And Mr. Chair.
And, well, I have a question for you, Rebecca. Are other cities doing this? Are they successful? What's going on?
Yeah, no,
There's
yes.
some other cities that have explored it. I don't know to what level of success. That's why I was suggesting it as a pilot program, not something that we specifically put in as a long-term until we know how it's gonna work.
Yeah, I like that idea of a pilot program. Yeah. And I'm sorry, someone else said.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think this would work out really well, but if the W-2 amount or the 1099 or whichever way you wanna do it, the pay as well, why would we give the incentive on the healthcare? Or why wouldn't we just give the incentive on one or the others? Or, it seems like it seems to complicate things, instead of just saying, here's your 1099. I think a 1099 might actually be the cleanest way to do it, but.
I
Cale
don't
can
know,
answer your question.
We have another guy here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Cale.
The only way to do this would be likely as employees, because unless they're gonna buy their own trucks and contract separately with the city, it's gonna have to be an employee-based situation.
Gotcha.
and the idea with the healthcare is we want to incentivize people to come back. Not, they might not wanna do it for whatever we would be paying them an hour, so. Wouldn't be a significant amount, but it would help. I think it's a mutually beneficial
Yeah, 'cause it-
opportunity.
$20 in healthcare benefits is
Mr. Chair?
better than $20 in cash.
Yeah, tax-wise.
Tax-wise.
No, we
No?
can't pay them with health insurance. We could give them incentive, but you have
Incentives.
to pay them money. We
We
can't
still pay them an
Oh, we still have to
We
pay
can't
'em.
evade-
Yes.
Yes,
that's
we'll have to
called
pay 'em.
tax evasion, if we would do that.
Yeah,
it's
Sure.
fine.
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Sure.
And Alderman
I
Root.
figure we still pay them.
And with the plow drivers, that's just a for instance, they would be getting the same as the other guy plowing as well.
Well, the thought, and like I said, we haven't
Right.
really worked everything out, but the thought would be that they would probably be on step one of whatever a truck driver
Okay.
is. Not at what they left
Right.
at.
Maybe they left at step one.
Yeah.
Well,
don't
then we
wanna do
would
that.
probably
We don't
call
want
them back.
They're not welcome in this city,
Yes.
period.
And if they would have had to leave in good standing and everything like that. We don't want challenging people coming back.
Gotcha.
Move that to year 12 now.
Yeah,
That's right, yes.
exactly. So-
All right, yes.
there's a
So y-
consensus
You
of
get our
that.
consensus, our head nods, yes, please
Yeah.
proceed with this.
Thank you.
And then, let's place that on file. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, item 8 is placed on file. All right, now, is there anything else to properly come before the committee? Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.